Today I want to show you the first real video game that I ever made. You see, this is my old electronics box. I don't think it's in here. That was like my whole video idea. Okay, let's try this a different way. Okay, so this is my first game that I ever made, and you can see that it has a title screen, it has play, options, quit, it has a little volume slider, it had this moving background behind it, no loading screen, which is hilarious. Okay, so this is the game, right? You are a red ball, and every time you tap the screen, you jump, and you have to avoid these blocks that just oscillate left and right. If you collide with the blocks, then you lose. It's not the most boring game I've ever played, but it's definitely the most simple game that I've ever made. Okay, so that's the game, right? It's extremely simple, and why do I bring it up to you now? Well, I want to talk about the importance of starting with super small games. And this was like the pivotal moment for me. Before this, I had done some tutorials in Unity. I had put together some projects. They were basically tech demos. But it wasn't until I put this specific game together, put it on my phone, and then put it on the App Store that things started to really click for me about what it takes to be a game developer. And now I'm at the point where I've published games on Android, iOS, Xbox, PlayStation, Steam, itch. I've co-developed games that are coming out on Switch. I've worked on a lot of different platforms, and each one has a different publishing process. I always think back to this game when I am in a new publishing environment or a platform that I haven't published on before, because I always get the same feeling. When I started publishing this game, it was very daunting, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I was just kind of trying to figure out what it takes to ship a game out the door. This is why it's important that I started with such a stupid simple game, because I wanted to learn to ship games. You can develop and create games, but actually getting it out the door and shipping it is a completely different skill. Focusing on a deep core gameplay loop would have just distracted me from what my actual goal was, which was to figure out how I can go from A to Z, completely shipping a game from scratch. So the year was 2019, I believe. I had learned some game development on the side. I was just starting to pick it up as a hobby. I realized that I wanted to get really serious about game development. To get really serious, you have to actually make games, which, you know, checks out. If you want to be a game developer, you should develop games. But not just develop them, but be able to ship them. And this was important for me because I wanted to get a job in the games industry, which meant that I needed a portfolio of games that I could show to potential employers. So I had a lot of determination, right? I really wanted to get a game out onto the public stage. So I did a lot of planning. I tried to figure out, okay, what is the minimum viable product that I would need to be able to ship a game out the door? And I just made it as cheap and poor as I could because the game wasn't the focus. The focus was on being able to complete a project. And I'm actually glad that I can't find the source files for this project because I'm sure that the code was absolutely atrocious. But that's not the point. I didn't want to write good code and I didn't want to make a good game, but I needed to learn project management and publishing. I needed to prove to myself that I could make an entire game. Like, imagine somebody who can work on cars, right? Maybe you can change the oil by yourself, or maybe you can add tire pressure to your tires. But those people can't take a rusty old junker muscle car and restore it into a really sweet hot rod. There's so much heavy lifting that goes into taking a project to its completion. And the way that I saw it is I was learning some game dev skills that was kind of like with me tinkering a car. You know, I can change the oil, I can add some more windshield wiper fluid here, but I couldn't do like the whole thing. And that's what I wanted to learn. So I had something to prove to myself. Okay, so let me bring you into my strategy. Now remember, this is before I knew anything about game development. This was before I made 30 plus games. This was before I worked at a game studio as a gameplay programmer. And this was way before I quit my job to start making my own video games. So I wrote out all the necessities that I needed in a very bare minimum game design document. And at a very high level, it was basically, you need a title screen, you need music, you need options for the volume, you need to quit the app, you need a core game loop with a win and lose condition, and you need to publish it on the Android App Store. Then I came to the publishing platform, and this is the part that a lot of people don't touch. This was a long time ago now. It was like 5 or 6 years ago maybe. So I'll tell you what I remember. I paid the one-time fee, which was like $30 to be able to publish on Android. I tested the game on my phone until it was relatively bug-free. I created an icon for the app, and then I spent some time filling out the store page. And this was interesting because it made me start to think about the marketability of my game. When you have to take screenshots and maybe even a gameplay trailer, you start thinking, oh, how are players going to perceive this game? Because when you're developing it and testing it, you're actually playing it. So you're mostly concerned with, oh, how does this feel? How is the enjoyment of the game? Is it a good experience once you have the game in your hand and you're playing it? But when you're filling out a store page, you're concentrating on curb appeal. I started asking questions like, oh, how can I get more varied screenshots? All of my screenshots look basically identical. How can I add more color? How can I make it appeal a little better? And that's a really valuable skill. And being able to summarize your game in just a couple of sentences to try and pitch it to people is super valuable as well. Because not a lot of people are good at concisely describing their game in a way that makes it attractive. Then I also had to do a bunch of stuff with like localization and publishing in different countries and signing legal stuff and a bunch of garbage that is pretty straightforward. And then I was able to publish the game, which meant that my friends and family could finally download it and play it for themselves. Except not really, because all of my friends and family had iPhones, so. But here's some observations that I made during this time. Number one was, even with an extremely stupidly simple idea, execution was still very difficult. I knew it would get easier over time, but finishing projects was a brand new skill to me. I used to just start a new project every 2 weeks and tinker around and then move on to whatever was shiny next. Okay, second thing is that publishing is a skill in itself. There's a lot of marketing skills that goes into publishing a game. Figuring out how you can capture good screenshots, writing good copy for the store descriptions, creating all the different app logo sizes, building the actual bundle, figuring out how to sign your build with a secret key and upload it to the store, all of that stuff. Number three is that nobody cares. I learned very early on that when I put something online, nobody cares about it. Whether it's an Android app or a YouTube video or anything, you publish your first thing and nobody gives a rip. I think this game got a total of like 10 downloads, which is pretty abysmal. Number four is that I'm really glad that I started small. It's been over 6 years now, and the games that I create are a lot better, and I'm able to complete projects with a much bigger scope. I've released games on all major console platforms, and each time I come to a new platform, I try to start as simply as possible to just make the process easier to learn. So that's the story of the first real video game that I ever developed. I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for sticking around to the end. If you want to wishlist my game that's coming out very soon, it's called Bridges and Docks, and it's going to be out on Steam very, very soon. And I'm really excited for you all to get your hands on it because it's very fun to play with. That's it for now, and I'll see you guys in the next one.